What if the US Army had a stealth aircraft in 1970? Not stealth from radar, stealth from ears. A propeller aircraft so quiet that enemy soldiers standing directly beneath it heard nothing. Not the engine, not the prop, nothing. Built by Lockheed, based on a glider. Only 11 ever made. And for one very specific job in Vietnam, it did things no helicopter could. Today, the Lockheed YO-3A Quiet Star. Vietnam, 1968. American forces are fighting a very unusual war because the enemy moves at night, through jungle, in small groups, on foot or on bicycles, and they know exactly when American aircraft are coming because helicopters are so loud, really loud. A Huey can be heard from 2 miles away in still air. Blades slap, turbine whines, rotor wash rattles every leaf on every tree for 100 meters in every direction, which is fine when you are inserting a squad in a hurry, or extracting wounded, or gunning down a tree line, but absolutely useless when you are trying to watch what the other side is doing without them knowing you are watching, which was the exact problem. The North Vietnamese army and the Viet Cong ran most of their logistics at night. Trucks, supply columns, troop movements, all under the cover of darkness. If you could see what they were doing without being detected, you could shape the entire war, direct artillery, vector in ground forces, map their supply lines. But the moment they heard your aircraft, they went silent, melted into the jungle, vanished. So the US Army wrote a very specific requirement in 1968. Build us an aircraft that is acoustically undetectable from the ground at 1,500 feet at night. That was the entire brief. Not fast, not armed, not stealthy in the radar sense, just quiet, silent, if possible, which sounds simple, and which turned out to be one of the hardest engineering problems anyone had ever attempted. A war fought at night, an enemy who ran when they heard engines, and a requirement for an aircraft that would not tell them it was coming, which meant Lockheed had to start from a very unusual place. Lockheed's Missiles and Space Company in Sunnyvale, California, got the contract, which is worth pausing on, because Lockheed Missiles and Space had never built an aircraft before. They built rockets, satellites, ballistic missile guidance systems, but somebody at the Pentagon looked at the acoustic stealth problem and decided this was more like a space engineering problem than a traditional aircraft problem, which turned out to be exactly right. The team started from an unusual base, a Schweitzer SGS-232 glider, not a purpose-built airframe, just a production civilian training glider, because gliders are already quiet by nature. No engine, long slender wings, low drag, low speed. Everything a glider was optimized for was exactly what the mission needed. In 1966, Lockheed built 2 prototypes called the QT-2 quiet thrusters, modified Schweitzer gliders with tiny muffled engines bolted on. They shipped 2 of these to Vietnam in January 1968, where they arrived exactly in time to get caught up in the Tet offensive. And they worked well enough that the Army ordered a proper production version, which became the YO-3 A Quiet Star. 11 were built, 9 went to Vietnam, and for 18 months between 1970 and 71, they did things no other aircraft in the war could do. A rocket company, a civilian glider, and an 18-month combat deployment that most people have never heard of. But the interesting question is how you actually make an aircraft quiet, because that turned out to be the hardest engineering job of the entire program. This is where it gets interesting, because propeller aircraft make noise from 3 sources: engine, propeller, airframe cutting through the air. Lockheed had to reduce all 3 to almost nothing, simultaneously, without turning the aircraft into something that could not fly. And every one of the solutions they came up with was a piece of proper lateral engineering. First, the engine. Lockheed picked a Continental IO-360, 6 cylinders, 210 horsepower, air-cooled, which by piston aircraft standards is a completely normal engine. What they did around it was not normal at all. They wrapped the entire engine bay in a fiberglass sound-absorbing liner, then built a crossover exhaust system that took the exhaust from the left bank of cylinders, rotated it across to the right side of the engine bay, and merged it with the right bank exhaust. That combined stream then went through a set of dissipating, resonating mufflers, which then fed into an acoustic exhaust pipe that ran a full 26 feet down the length of the the fuselage, because sound waves lose energy over distance. So the further you can move exhaust noise from the point where it leaves the engine, the quieter it becomes at the ear. Second, the propeller. This is the clever bit. Because a normal aircraft prop turns at about 2400 RPM at cruise, its tips travel near to the speed of sound. That tip vortex is what produces the characteristic buzzing whine you hear when an aircraft fly over. Lockheed's solution was to slow the prop right down to about 800 revolutions per minute, which required a reduction system between the engine and the prop, so the engine could run at its normal efficient speed, but the prop turned 3 times slower. They tried gears first. Gears whine, so the team switched to a belt drive. 12 rubber belts running over pulleys, 3.33:1 reduction ratio. The belt drive is much quieter. Then the prop itself, originally a 6-bladed fixed-pitch design, later replaced in March 1971 with a 3-bladed constant-speed wooden prop designed by a legendary propeller designer called Ole Fallin. Wood is quieter than metal. The 3-blade design was surprisingly as quiet as the 6-blade and much more efficient at cruise, which is why the later YO-3As all wore the 3-blade wooden prop. Third, the airframe, which already had glider-quality wings courtesy of the Schweizer base. Long, slender, 57 feet of wingspan, very low induced drag, which meant the airframe itself did not slap or buzz through the air the way a shorter, blunter aircraft does. But Lockheed went further. They fared in every gap, smoothed every rivet line they could, fitted a huge single-piece bubble canopy, which at the time was the largest single-blown canopy on any aircraft in the world, which sounds like a small detail, but every flat panel and every gap creates a small acoustic signature, and Lockheed reduced all of them. There is a famous story about the crew chiefs at the airfields in Vietnam. Before each night mission, a YO-3A would fly over the maintenance area at 500 feet. The crew chiefs stood on the tarmac, listened carefully. If they heard any rattle, any whistle, any noise at all, the aircraft returned to the runway, where they applied duct tape to the offending panel until it was quiet. Duct tape on a Lockheed stealth aircraft, because at the frequencies that matter for detection, duct tape works. The result was something extraordinary. Project manager Stanley Hall famously described the aircraft's noise as the gentle rushing sound of the ocean surf. Not an engine, not a propeller, just the sound of moving air. At 1500 feet above the ground, in the middle of a Vietnamese jungle at night, with insects and wind and the general background of nature going on around it, the YO-3A was almost completely inaudible. Some pilots reported flying missions at 200 feet above enemy troops and still going undetected, which is properly absurd for a piston engine aircraft. Wrapped engine bay, crossover exhaust running 26 feet down the fuselage, belt-driven wooden prop turning 3 times slower than normal, glider wings, and duct tape when required. But an aircraft that no one can hear is only useful if you can actually see something from it. Which brings us to the mission equipment. Watching through a periscope. The observer sat in the front seat, pilot behind, in tandem, and in front of the observer. Hanging below the cockpit floor was a night vision aerial periscope, made by Xerox Electro-Optical in Pasadena. This was a downward-looking, gimbaled, image-intensifying scope, coupled with an infrared illuminator, and, on the later aircraft, a laser target designator system. The periscope could be aimed, zoomed, and moved around while the aircraft flew a slow orbit, which meant the observer could stay locked on a target while the pilot flew a lazy circle overhead. The whole thing was mounted on a movable turret, so it could look almost straight down or off to either side. The night vision performance was, by 1970 standards, extraordinary. Lockheed engineers stated the observer could see a Viet Cong soldier lighting a cigarette from a distance of 1 nautical mile at night in quarter moonlight, which is insanely good performance for the era. About 20 years before consumer night vision existed at all, radios linked the aircraft directly to friendly ground units and artillery batteries, so the observer could not just watch, they could act on what they they saw in real time. Spot a truck convoy at 10 miles, call in coordinates, watch artillery ranging rounds land, correct the fire, all while the enemy on the ground had no idea they were being watched. Missions typically ran between 3 and 6 hours, depending on load, which is a long night sitting in a small canopy staring through a periscope. The observer workload was intense, but the aircraft itself was so stable and so quiet that it was basically the most boring stealth mission in aviation history and the most productive. Cigarettes from a mile away, live artillery direction, a 3-hour mission that felt like watching paint dry. Which brings us to what actually happened when the YO-3A went to Vietnam. 9 YO-3s shipped to Vietnam between June 1970 and September 1971. 4 went to Long Thanh North, 3 went to Phu Bai, 2 went to Binh Thuy in the Mekong Delta. The aircraft flew nighttime observation missions across the country, tracking supply movements on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, watching river crossings in the Delta, directing artillery, mapping enemy positions. 80% of the observations were made visually through the periscope, the rest through the night vision system, and the aircraft were essentially invisible to the ground. There is one particularly telling account. Crews would fly directly over enemy camps, watch soldiers cooking meals, watch trucks being loaded, watch guards changing shifts, all without the enemy ever looking up because there was no sound to look up at, which was the entire point. The tactical impact was enormous. Ground commanders got real-time intelligence on enemy movements that no other aircraft could provide. Helicopters could not do it because they were audible from miles away. Jets flew too high and too fast. Even the O-1 Bird Dog and the O-2 Skymaster, the traditional forward air controllers, could be heard clearly at low altitude. The YO-3A was the only aircraft in Vietnam that could sit above an enemy position at 800 feet for 2 hours and never be detected. Not every mission was a success. 3 of the 11 aircraft built were lost during the program. 1 crashed in the United States before deployment. 2 were lost in Vietnam. In one of those crashes near Bien Hoa in June 1971, both crew members were killed, but no YO-3A was ever lost to enemy fire because no enemy on the ground ever knew where to shoot. The program ran for about 18 months in theater. Then, in September 1971, the aircraft were quietly withdrawn because American involvement in Vietnam was winding down, and because the specific mission the YO-3A did so well was becoming less relevant. Undetected surveillance for 18 months, real-time artillery direction, 0 combat losses, and then Vietnam ended, which raises the obvious question of why an aircraft this effective did not carry on into every conflict after. The YO-3A was extraordinary at one very specific mission: low-altitude nighttime surveillance in relatively permissive airspace against an enemy with limited electronic detection capability. In a war being fought at night in a jungle, change any of those variables, and the YO-3A stops being useful. Against a modern enemy with radar, the Quiet Star has no protection at all. Its acoustic stealth is worthless when a radar sees it 50 miles out. Against an enemy with proper night vision equipment of their own, the aircraft becomes visible even if it is silent. Against a mission that requires speed or range, 70 knots and 6 hours of endurance is not competitive. Its whole design was optimized around a very specific problem that Vietnam presented and that most other conflicts do not. Meanwhile, the technology moved. By the mid-1970s, satellite reconnaissance was maturing. High-altitude drones started to appear. The SR-71 was flying at 80,000 feet at 3 times the speed of sound. And within 20 years, the first modern unmanned aerial vehicles like the RQ-1 Predator would arrive. A UAV can loiter overhead for 20 hours. It carries night vision, infrared, real-time video downlink, and it does not put a 2-man crew at risk. The moment UAV technology matured, the entire mission profile of the YO-3A was obsolete, because a drone is even quieter from the ground perspective, smaller, higher, and you can lose one without writing letters to families. So the YO-3A was retired not because it stopped working. It stopped working because the world it was designed for stopped existing. An aircraft that solved one narrow problem brilliantly and then found that specific problem replaced by a completely different approach, which raises the question of where all those aircraft ended up. Of the 11 built, 3 were lost in crashes, 8 survive, which is not bad for a Vietnam-era aircraft with only a couple of years of service. The first production aircraft, serial number 69-18000, sits at the U.S. Army Aviation Museum at Fort Rucker, Alabama. Up in Seattle, the Museum of Flight owns aircraft 69-18005, which served in Vietnam from 1970 to 72. Pima Air and Space Museum in Arizona has 69-18006. Western Museum of Flight in California holds 69-18007. Hiller Aviation Museum has another, and the Vietnam Helicopters Museum in California owns 69-18010, which had one of the most interesting post-war careers of the lot, because after Vietnam, 2 YO-3As went to the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, where they proved outstandingly good at catching poachers at night, because poachers, like the Viet Cong before them, tend to work after dark. The FBI then borrowed the aircraft for a while, using them to track kidnappers and extortionists in cases where element of surprise mattered. Then NASA got hold of the aircraft in 1978, fitted it with wingtip and tail microphones, and used it as a flying acoustic measurement platform. Because the aircraft was so quiet, it could measure the acoustic signature of other aircraft in flight without polluting the data with its own noise. NASA used it to study helicopter rotor noise, tilt rotor acoustics, even sonic booms from the SR-71 Blackbird, which is a fantastic second career for what started as a Vietnam War stealth spy plane. In 1997, the NASA aircraft transferred to the Dryden Flight Research Center and eventually retired in the 2000s. So if you want to see a quiet star today, you can. In half a dozen American museums, which is more than most limited-run Vietnam-era experimental aircraft managed. Poacher patrols in Louisiana, kidnappers in the FBI files, rotor noise measurements for NASA, and now quiet display in museums across the United States. Which brings us to the final verdict. Actually was. So, was the Quiet Star a helicopter replacement? Not really. Not for most of what helicopters do. It could not lift troops, could not extract wounded, could not hover, could not lift external loads, could not fly close support missions. For every one of those roles, helicopters remain the only option. But for one very specific mission, silent nighttime surveillance and artillery direction, the Quiet Star did something no helicopter has ever been able to do. It flew over an enemy target and was not heard. And it watched people who did not know they were being watched. And it did all of that with 210 horsepower, a wooden propeller, and 11 feet of exhaust pipe, which is the honest verdict. The Quiet Star was never meant to replace the helicopter. It was meant to replace one specific thing that helicopters cannot do. And in that role, for that 18 months in Vietnam, it was without competition. Nothing before it could do the job. Nothing at the time could do the job. And by the time somebody figured out how to do the job differently with drones and satellites, the Quiet Star had already proven that acoustic stealth could work. Lessons from the Quiet Star fed forward into modern UAV design. The idea that being quiet is a form of stealth, that a slow, loitering platform can outperform a fast one for surveillance. All of that started with 11 aircraft, a Schweitzer glider airframe, and one very specific Vietnam problem. And unlike most Cold War experiments, the Quiet Star actually worked, which in the aviation world is remarkable enough on its own, and which explains why every UAV engineer today owes something to a small team in Sunnyvale, a couple of Schweitzer gliders, and one very specific Vietnam problem. If this got you thinking, like and subscribe. Also tell us in the comments that would you have flown one of these. Thanks for hanging out.